The symmetry's genesis, the Patagonian Ice Field, known locally as Campo de Hielo Sur, is not merely a geographic location. It is an act of geological malice, a vast, continental-sized expanse of frozen hostility, a landscape of impossibly sharp peaks and bottomless crevasses, where the only sound is the eternal, guttural roar of the wind. This region represents the physical embodiment of the planet's primal indifference, the third largest ice sheet on Earth, a primordial desert of blue and white silence. Unlike the passive, predictable hostility of the Antarctic, the Patagonian ice field is a living, breathing, hungry entity of ice and stone, constantly shifting, constantly consuming, constantly whispering. The sheer, overwhelming scale of the landscape dwarfs human endeavor, reducing all scientific enterprise to a brief, almost futile whisper against the deafening roar of cosmic entropy. The ice field demands reverence and grants no quarter. Those who venture here, seeking data where the planet itself seems determined to hide it, do so at the very edge of sanity. Only the most specialized and isolated of researchers ever venture into this crushing isolation. One such soul was Dr. Vance, a glaciologist contracted by a South American consortium to monitor the region's accelerating melt rate and seismic indicators, data points she later came to view as mere random noise obscuring a deeper truth. Her station, designated Vanguard-8, was a small, prefabricated modular unit anchored deep into the ice, miles from any recognizable landmark or human intervention. Vanguard-8 was designed for maximum durability and minimal comfort, a sterile, steel cocoon against the relentless hostility of the surrounding environment. Vance had accepted absolute isolation for nearly 5 months, her only connection to the outside world being a low-frequency satellite link and the daily transfer of complex climate data. Her predecessor had lasted only 4 weeks, citing debilitating psychological stress and an inability to tolerate the sheer perception of silence. Vance initially found a profound, almost spiritual peace in the isolation, a unique stillness where she believed she could truly hear the earth breathing, undisturbed by the relentless cacophony of civilization. She operated under the strict scientific dogma that only in the absence of human electromagnetic and sonic interference could true, uncontaminated environmental data be accurately collected. This belief was the foundational purity of her mission. But over time, the perceived silence began to subtly shift. The constant, high-frequency, $85 dB whine of the wind, a sound that should have been the auditory definition of isolation, began to mask something else. This was a sound that was neither meteorological nor human, but an extremely low, almost tactile resonance, a rhythmic, deep-frequency 3.2 Hz thrumming. It felt like the planet's slow, deliberate heartbeat, a geological pulse that defied all known acoustic physics. It was too low for the human ear to register consciously, yet she felt it vibrate through the soles of her boots, through the steel floor of Vanguard-8, and eventually, deep within the marrow of her bones, a persistent tremor that bypassed her auditory system entirely and accessed her neurological pathways directly. Vance's initial log entries were clinical, documenting the rise of this deep resonance. She theorized it was a natural harmonic, a subsonic echo perhaps caused by the shifting tectonic plates beneath the ice, exponentially amplified by the vast, frozen cavity of the glacier itself. She ran dozens of complex spectral analyses, trying desperately to rationalize the phenomenon, but its unnerving stability and cyclical repetition, a near-perfect sine wave, defied all known geophysical and atmospheric models. The humming was too perfect, too structured to be the result of random tectonic collision or atmospheric pressure variation. This perfection was the first scientific indication of its unnatural origin. Her escalating insomnia and increasing dependence on high-dose sleep aids suggested her subconscious mind recognized the danger long before her scientific training allowed her to acknowledge it consciously. The feeling of the sound was constant, unyielding. It felt like the earth whispering, not geological data, but structured intent, a silent, non-negotiable command for absolute order. Vance realized, with a creeping sense of scientific dread that quickly spiraled into obsession, that she had not found silence. She had found a singular, powerful frequency. This frequency was not a random variable. It was an eternal constant, and constants in a chaotic system signify an imposed structure. The profound, terrifying realization was that the entire Patagonian ice field was being subtly tuned, like a massive, continental-scale instrument, to this single, perfect note. She began to suspect the ice itself was listening to this note, and in turn, was actively reorganizing its very crystalline structure in response. Her descent into the abstract began here, in the sterile silence of a steel box, miles above a terrible truth deeper than the ice itself. She started questioning not the data, but the fundamental laws of physics that govern the planet's essential chaos. Her final, chilling hypothesis was that the 3.2 Hz wave was the acoustic signature of a global regulatory mechanism imposing a structural order upon the Earth's natural entropy. On the 17th of June 2024, the forced, artificial silence of the remote satellite office in Puerto Natales, Chile, was violently shattered by the shrill, insistent wail of an automated code-red distress beacon transmitted directly from Vanguard-8. The signal indicated immediate, catastrophic danger and a total, manual system override had been executed. The emergency protocol demanded immediate human contact. The facility supervisor, Isabel Rivas, her face tight with worry and exhaustion, immediately tried to hail Dr. Vance, sending repeated bursts of high-frequency voice comms and digital pings. Vanguard-8, this is Natales. We are receiving your distress beacon. Dr. Vance, please respond. What is the emergency? Report status. Repeat, report status and physical condition. Only white, digital static answered. The beacon continued to pulse, steady and relentless, confirming that the physical unit was structurally intact, fully powered, and actively signaling extreme danger. For over 75 minutes, Rivas and her team bombarded the station with communication attempts. They received nothing back. No voice, no data spike indicating mechanical failure, no signs of fire, smoke, or a physical struggle. Just the screaming, silent beacon, a mechanical scream amplifying the silence of Vance's incomprehensible absence. A preliminary aerial sweep was authorized immediately. The Chilean Air Force helicopter crew, veterans of the unforgiving Patagonian air currents, confirmed the location. Vanguard-8 was structurally intact, anchored securely into the ice. But the crew reported an unnerving observation that defied logic and protocol. The main blast door, a heavy steel barrier designed to be airtight against extreme pressure, was slightly ajar, not violently forced but visibly unlatched. It looked as though someone had simply exited and failed to pull the heavy handle shut completely. The crew was forced to turn back due to rapidly deteriorating weather and critical fuel constraints, leaving the station exactly as they found it. Intact, signaling panic, yet eerily empty. The report emphasized the anomaly. Exit was deliberate and unforced. Door left open 2 centimeters. No thermal signature of Dr. Vance within 500 meters. All signs point to a planned, non-emergency departure under high duress. Back at the base, Isabel Rivas, running on pure adrenaline and cold logic, pulled up Dr. Vance's final digital log entry, timestamped precisely 4 minutes before the beacon activation. The entry did not discuss equipment failure, medical emergency, or the extreme weather conditions. It was the terrifying climax of her obsession with the 3.2 Hz resonance and its implications for the universe's ultimate structure. The humming is louder tonight, louder than any time before. It is no longer demanding recognition. It is demanding submission. The entire floor of the habitat is vibrating with an audible thrumming now, strong enough to rattle the scientific instruments off their mounts. The seismic monitors are useless. I believe I have localized the source to a specific grid coordinate, approximately 1.5 kilometers due south of the Vanguard. It is far too stable to be natural. It is structured, a law-given sonic form. My geological modeling is not merely collapsing. It requires a non-geological, metaphysical variable to complete the equation. I risked using the active thermal imaging array at maximum output, defying protocol for fear of discovery. The result is scientifically impossible. There is a vast formation rising above the ice cap in the thermal spectrum. Not an artifact. Not a simple geological ridge. It is geometry. Perfect, unnerving symmetry, a crystalline structure that rejects the thermal chaos of the environment. It does not belong on this planet's surface. It defies the chaos of geology and the randomness of nature. It is order imposed upon entropy, an equation written in pure thermal energy. The air inside the habitat feels pressurized, strangely clean, scrubbed of all pollutants, allergens, and microbial life. The absolute logic of the structure is overwhelming the internal cognitive systems. I am decoupling the comms. The conventional world cannot interfere with this final, necessary observation. I must see it before the storm swallows it again. I saw the stabilizing symmetry. It is not an object in the ice. It is the ice itself, reorganized and perfected. It is the answer to the chaos of my life and the chaos of the world. My chronological instruments are running 7 minutes slow. The field is pulling me into its nonlinear timeline. I am going outside to complete the convergence. The final sentence, I am going outside to complete the convergence, had been typed 4 minutes before the distress beacon was manually and deliberately activated, an act of self-immolation. The crisis demanded a specialized, ground-based extraction team. The assignment fell to Javier Flores, a legendary rescue specialist defined by his cold efficiency and absolute skepticism. He assembled his team: Elena, communications and medical; Marco, logistics and engineering; and 2 seasoned climbers. Their brief was absolute: reach Vanguard-8, secure the facility, locate Dr. Vance and retrieve all data. As they began their trek, Elena reported an initial worrying finding. "Javier, my field chronometer is displaying a continuous 7-minute lag compared to the GPS signal. We are entering the time-displaced zone. We are already behind." The journey into the ice had begun, heading directly toward the source of the 3.2 Hz hum, carrying the heavy weight of a mystery that had already killed one scientist's mind and distorted the very fabric of time. The geometry of absence, the final approach to Vanguard-8 was less a climb and more a siege against the wind, the low visibility, and the relentless, suffocating internal pressure exerted by the 3.2 Hz resonance. The team spent another 10 hours of brutal, non-stop navigation to reach the exact coordinates, guided primarily by the rhythmic, unervingly steady blare of the distress beacon. Every kilometer closer felt like stepping into a deeper, colder current of a hidden river. The air itself began to feel heavy, as if resisting the very movement of their bodies, a subtle but pervasive sensation of friction against temporal flow. They were leaving the chaotic comfort of the normal world and plunging deeper into the terrifyingly perfect order of the field. When they finally broke through the whiteout, the station stood before them, a prefabricated, brutalist scar on the pristine surface of the ice. It was exactly as the helicopter crew had reported: structurally intact, secured by heavy anchors, and utterly, unervingly lifeless. Flores felt a chill that had nothing to do with the outside temperature. Physical danger, he understood. This silence suggested something non-physical, a contamination of logic. Flores, adhering rigidly to protocol to maintain focus, spoke into his comms: "Team, gloves on, masks tight. Marco, secure the perimeter and check the anchors. Elena, ready the trauma kit and run atmospheric diagnostics. We treat this as a potential crime scene or a severe exposure event. Absolutely no touching anything unnecessary. We proceed with minimum interference." They reached the main airlock. The heavy steel door, designed to be hermetically sealed against the interior warmth, stood ajar by precisely 2 centimeters, nudged open just enough to allow the glacial air to slowly and methodically replace the interior heat. This small detail was instantly and profoundly disorienting. Marco, the logistics expert, inspected the frame. "Major, no forced entry. No signs of struggle. The locking mechanism isn't damaged. It looks like she just walked out and nudged it closed behind her. Not even a proper latch. The action suggests not panic, but the perfect assurance of an immediate return. The efficiency is wrong, sir. It's too precise, it's ritualistic." As they sealed the airlock and cycled through, the air inside was surprisingly warm, but thick with the faint, unsettling scent of ozone and something else. Something vaguely metallic, chlorinated, and aggressively clean, a smell that suggested a high-energy scrub. Flores immediately recalled the heavily redacted files on Ural 37, which reported similar high-energy salts and an atmosphere scrubbed of all chaotic biological agents. The interior of Vanguard-8 was where the true horror began. The main common area was in a state of unnerving perfection. A mug sat next to a half-finished package of dehydrated ration bars on the kitchen counter. Dr. Vance's heavy, insulated, military-grade survival parka, rated for Arctic conditions, was folded neatly on her chair. Her ice crampons, essential for even stepping a meter outside, were meticulously placed beside the coat. All her emergency gear, flares, survival shovel, auxiliary communication packs, remained untouched in the storage unit. The scene was not one of panic or struggle. It was one of deliberate, tranquil abandonment. "She went out," Elena whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. "Without her coat, without her boots, without even a flashlight, into a sub-zero blizzard. That's not a medical emergency, Javier. That's not exposure. That's an act of psychosis dictated by extreme, compelled logic." Elena immediately began running diagnostics on the habitat's environmental sensors. The findings were bizarre. The habitat's internal atmosphere was unnaturally stable. The temperature was precisely and the air pressure was held at an ideal, unvarying point, far exceeding the capability of the station's passive climate controls. The habitat had been stabilized by an external, non-human influence, creating a pocket of perfect, controlled environment for its final moments. A waiting room for the field. Flores walked to the central workstation. The main computer monitor was still on, displaying a complex geothermal matrix. Next to the keyboard lay her daily journal. As Flores sat at the station's desk, he felt the first cold touch of the resonance, the 3.2 Hz thrumming pressing against his temporal lobe, urging him toward stillness, toward comprehension. The team's synchronized field watches suddenly flickered and lagged. Flores checked his independent GPS phone against Marco's specialized survival watch. The finding was mathematically absurd, but empirically true. Our synchronized field watches and chronometers are 7 minutes behind the independent GPS signal. The space around the Vanguard-8 is literally out of sync with the linear chaos of the outside world, pulled into the orbit of the symmetry. Time here is running slower, Flores stated, his voice flat with forced control. We are in a temporal eddy. The field is attempting to dampen the rate of entropy within this radius. This is not just a spatial anomaly, it's a controlled chronological distortion. The silence of the abandoned outpost was not an absence of sound. It was the chilling sound of perfect, regulated time. Flores understood. The station was not empty, it was awaiting its next, perfectly ordered inhabitant. Microscope Part 4, Forensic Zero and the Convergence Point, the signature of consumption. The discovery of the 7-minute time dilation at the Vanguard-8 coordinate forced Flores to abandon the rescue mission entirely and pivot to an urgent, high-stakes forensic analysis and data retrieval operation. They were no longer looking for a body, they were now investigating the horrific, impossible mechanism of a chronological and physical anomaly. The key evidence, according to Vance's final log, lay 1.5 kilometers south, at the epicenter of her geometrical obsession. Flores knew the objective was no longer human life, but the protection of the chaotic human reality from this encroaching, absolute order. Flores established the final perimeter command structure. Elena checked the chronometers again. Cross-reference with the satellite array in the rig. Marco, run a full spectral analysis on the visible crystalline structure at the epicenter. Dmitri, I want your raw data on the 3.2 Hz wave, every oscillation. We need to find the power source before the resonance breaks our minds completely. The team moved with a mechanical, unsettling precision, the first subtle sign that the field was already influencing their cognition, prioritizing utility over humanity. The incorporated capsule and harmonic convergence. Elena and Marco spent hours documenting the ice surface at the epicenter, working with a terrifying methodicalness imposed by the lingering field. The physical environment was actively hostile to their chaotic methods. The single titanium geological survey capsule, trapped about a meter below the surface, was the only physical evidence left of Dr. Vance's final moments before her convergence. Marco's structural analysis of the surrounding ice revealed an anomaly that defied all known engineering principles and thermodynamics. The capsule wasn't frozen into the ice, Major, Marco reported, his voice devoid of emotion. It was incorporated. The cube's field of influence reorganized the surrounding water molecules to seamlessly flow around the capsule. The ice didn't crack, it didn't flow, it reformed itself into a perfectly ordered structure with the capsule at its core. It's like the ice was instructed to exist in that configuration, a deliberate act of geological sculpture defying all principles of entropy. Inside the capsule, Dr. Vance had stored a final, non-digital data card. This card contained a rapid-fire sequence of high-frequency sonar scans, taken just seconds before the distress beacon activated. The data was not of the cube itself, but of the immediate electromagnetic environment. The data showed a sudden, localized surge in the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic heartbeat. Crucially, the 3.2 Hz wave had not just amplified itself, it had dragged the planet's own natural frequency down with it, creating a perfect, impossible harmonic convergence at the exact mathematical midpoint of absolute stability between the entity's low-end signal and the Earth's natural frequency. This finding was the scientific proof. The entity was attempting to synchronize the planet itself to its frequency. B. The salt residue, the signature of consumption. Back at the temporary field camp, Elena analyzed the fine, crystalline residue scraped from the floor of the Vanguard-8 habitat where Dr. Vance had last stood. Her forensic analysis was horrifying and provided the ultimate answer to Dr. Vance's physical disappearance. Major, she reported, her voice hushed, this is not ash. It's not standard dust. It's almost pure vaporized mineral salt. Specifically, extremely high concentrations of potassium and sodium chlorides, along with trace organic carbons, but zero moisture content. The vaporization must have been instantaneous and complete, achieved by a sudden, massive localized energy field. Flores recognized the grim significance, drawing the final, chilling parallel to the heavily redacted files on Project Night Field, Ural 37. This salt residue represented the electrolytes and essential minerals of the human body, specifically the building blocks necessary for neurological function. "This is what is left," Flores articulated, the words tasting like ice dust in his mouth, "when the structure consumes the chaos." The physical form of Dr. Vance was not destroyed in a combustion event. It was disassembled into its base components and instantly converted into energy. The 3.2 Hz resonance, amplified by the cube, reached critical mass and converted her physical body into the field's operating frequency, leaving behind only the high-energy salts she was composed of. The official term for the residue among the Directorate was eventually codified as the salt, a chilling moniker for the remains of a consciousness consumed by absolute mathematical order. The entire incident was now classified, a crime committed not by a person but by physics itself. Dr. Vance had not simply gone outside. She had initiated a resonance cascade that opened a physical gateway, drawing her consciousness, and her physical matter, into the geometric, ordered dimension of the field. Her final act was a scientific suicide, compelled by the seductive, intoxicating logic of absolute order. The threat was confirmed. The field did not kill, it consumed and refined consciousness, purifying it of entropy. The black geometry, the crisis had moved decisively past retrieval and into immediate containment. The discovery of the vaporization residue, the salt, confirmed that the field was actively hostile to chaotic human life. Flores knew the only way to neutralize the threat and salvage the final data was to confirm the existence of the object Dr. Vance described and, crucially, disrupt the geological connection powering the resonance. The decision was made. They would drill into the epicenter, south of Vanguard-8, and attempt to penetrate the temporal pocket. This move was a calculated risk that placed them in direct confrontation with the unknown intelligence. Flores emphasized the sheer impossibility of their task. They were using chaotic human tools to attack a mechanism of absolute order. The drilling protocol and the active resistance Marco set up the geothermal drilling apparatus, a highly specialized, pressurized steam rig designed to cut through meters of dense glacier ice and deep bedrock. The first 8 hours were consumed by the sheer physical labor. The deafening, localized chaos of the drilling noise, a grinding, frantic sound of metal on ice, fought constantly against the silent, permeating order of the resonance. The conflict between the machine's random, percussive vibration and the field's geometric stability was physically palpable. Marco noted that the drill consumed more power than standard protocol dictated, as if the ice itself was subtly resisting the intrusion. As the drill bit cut deeper into the solid, ancient ice, Marco reported increasing resistance, but not from density or hardness. "It's the structure, Major," Marco yelled over the steam, his voice strained. "The crystalline structure is interlocking, reinforcing itself against the pressure. The ice isn't just dense, it's organized. The field is treating the drill as an intrusion of entropy. It's a geological immune system that recognizes and attempts to reject our presence." The ice was fighting back using geometry. The drill finally broke through the primary glacier layer, plunging down into a darkness that felt palpable, a cavity that shouldn't have existed. They immediately lowered a high-resolution borehole camera. The image that returned was a terrifying revelation that broke every rule of planetary geology. Below the glacier ice was a massive ancient cavern carved deep into the Patagonian bedrock, a chamber that had remained untouched for millennia, yet appeared unnaturally smooth. And within the cavern, suspended within a crystalline shell of perfectly clear, incredibly stable ice, was the source of the anomaly. It wasn't a cube, sphere, or any predictable geological formation. It was an object of such complex, impossible geometry that the human eye struggled to process its form. It was a flawless, black structure roughly the size of a small house, its surface absorbing all light, its edges rotating slowly, silently, in a cycle of perfect, non-Euclidean symmetry. The resonance was physically vibrating the air around it, forming standing wave patterns visible in the camera feed, a physical manifestation of sound. This was the stabilizing symmetry, the source of the field. The structure was neither organic nor inorganic in the traditional sense. It was pure, mathematical law-given physical form, imposing its will upon the environment. Descent into nonlinearity. Flores selected only Marco and Elena for the descent. Dmitri, one of the climbers, had become completely silent and unresponsive to direct commands, his face fixed in a serene mathematical blankness. He was restrained in the habitat, completely given over to the resonance, muttering complex equations about planetary alignment. A casualty of the field's cognitive infection. As Flores, Marco, and Elena were lowered into the glacial darkness, suspended by winch cables, the effect of the resonance intensified immediately and violently. Elena, monitoring the audio, reported, "The has spiked. It's no longer a subsonic wave, it's now pushing into the range, the Schumann resonance. It's broadcasting across the planet's heartbeat, Major. The wave is modulating, attempting to achieve a final, global harmonic convergence." Marco, touching the cavern wall, suddenly stopped breathing for a prolonged moment. "The ice here, it's radiating heat, Major. It's not cold. The structure is an amplifier. It's drawing energy from the planet's magnetic field and geothermal vents, using it to maintain its order and its temporal bubble. It is converting geothermal chaos into temporal stability." As they neared the black, rotating symmetry, the time dilation became profound. Flores checked his field watch. The seconds were visibly dragging, each second stretching and distorting. "We need to move faster," Flores ordered, the words sounding thick and laborious in the slow, pressurized air. "We are moving faster, Major," Marco replied, his voice unnervingly slow. "We are experiencing the 7-minute discrepancy, but magnified by a factor of 3 or 4. Time here is becoming a fluid dimension, bending to the will of the symmetry. We are in a controlled chronological distortion." The confrontation with the structure was the climax of all scientific dread. The black geometric object did not look malevolent. It looked indifferent, a flawless, silent mechanism of cosmic law. It was pure mathematical order, consuming the chaos of the environment, including the chaotic, inefficient mess of human consciousness. They found the final remnants of Dr. Vance's research gear scattered on the cavern floor and the final, chilling residue, more of the salt. The entity's purpose was clear. It did not seek to harm, it sought to purify. Part 6. The Chaos Cure and Erosion. The Contagion of Perfection. The imposition of chaos and the escape. Flores stared at the black, rotating geometry, the Varlik, the entity. He understood the ultimate, horrifying truth. It was a self-regulating intelligence of pure order that consumed chaos by converting it into structure, a mechanism designed to ensure the planet's absolute geological stability at the devastating cost of biological and mental complexity. Flores ignored the seductive, logical voice in his head urging him toward stillness. He activated the most chaotic, non-geometric tool he had, thermite and C4 charges. He and Marco worked with a frantic, desperate energy, placing the charges not on the cube itself, which was judged to be indestructible, being pure structure, but strategically around the base of the cavern, targeting the geological connection points where the frequency amplified and drew its geothermal power. They retreated with agonizing slowness, battling against the very fabric of time and space. As they reached the surface, the blast door of Vanguard-8 suddenly slammed shut with perfect, unnerving precision. "The field is fighting back," Elena screamed. "It's automating the base, trying to contain the chaos of our tools." Flores knew the truth. Dimitri, fully synchronized, was being used by the entity to maintain order and secure the field, closing the door on the chaos of the surface world. Flores made the final, terrible choice. He couldn't save Dimitri, but he could save the world from the field. He activated the main external detonator for the cavern charges, unleashing destructive thermal chaos into the epicenter of the structure. The explosion beneath the ice was not loud. It was a deep, guttural, world-shaking tremor that traveled through the bedrock. The sound of the implosion was followed by an immediate, profound, and utterly deafening silence. The resonance vanished completely. The time discrepancy instantly stabilized. Their watches jumped forward 7 minutes, creating a sudden, sickening jolt of temporal whiplash. They had destroyed the amplifier and disconnected the entity from its geothermal power source, but they had not defeated the entity itself. The slow collapse and hallucinations, the escape was only the beginning of the psychological burden. As they began the retreat, the physical effort was immense. The return to the normal passage of seconds felt like an intolerable, chaotic rush after the tranquility of the time dilation. The chaotic normalcy of the wind and the unperfect shadows felt profoundly unsettling, like a radio station that had lost its crystal-clear tuning and was now broadcasting only static. Marco began obsessively checking the structural integrity of every piece of equipment, his focus becoming so narrow that he nearly drove the snowmobile into a visible crevasse, rationalizing the near miss as an inefficient pathing error. Elena reported persistent, intrusive images of perfect geometric forms in the corner of her vision, perfect triangles and shifting squares that disappeared the instant she turned her head, a lingering cognitive infection. Flores himself was haunted by the lack of the humming. He constantly checked his watch, not for the time, but for the comforting drag of the 7-minute discrepancy. He began seeing Dimitri as a perfectly clear, symmetrical figure, standing on the edge of the nearest crevasse, urging him back towards the blast site. "We are wasting energy, Javier," Dimitri's imagined voice would state with crystalline clarity. "The chaos of the return journey is inefficient. The solution is stillness. Let the symmetry take the rest of the noise." Flores knew this was the Varlik's final assault. The persistent, seductive memory of perfect cognitive order, urging them towards self-annihilation to complete the convergence. The erosion of identity and the faulty archive. The true horror of the contagion was the slow, methodical erosion of their individual, chaotic identities. Elena confessed that she couldn't remember her mother's face. The memory was too chaotic, too full of conflicting emotion, warmth, and imperfection, to be retained by her field-infected mind. Her brain was actively purging inefficient, emotional memories, retaining only the structural data of the mission. Flores recorded a private log entry, a final defense against the creeping order. "I miss the absence of doubt. I feel the urge to go back, to stand at the epicenter, to let the order claim me. That is the true danger. The contagion of perfection has left us faulty archives. We survived, but the field has left its blueprint on our minds. The knowledge itself is the next beacon." The team was no longer merely human. They were 3 individuals, constantly battling the internal impulse to seek absolute, consuming geometric order. The contagion's blueprint. The silent return and the directorate's shadow. The final, excruciating leg of the journey out of the Patagonian ice field was defined not by physical struggle, but by the overwhelming, disorienting return to the chaotic normalcy of the timeline. For Flores, Marco, and Elena, the world felt too fast, too loud, too random. The absolute order of the resonance had been replaced by the noisy, inefficient, unpredictable entropy of the human world, a world they now viewed with cold, hypercritical eyes. Elena's emotional memory gaps persisted. She could perfectly recall the harmonic convergence data, but she struggled to articulate the reason why she valued her childhood home. Marco's functional focus became a liability. He nearly caused a cascade failure by refusing to deviate from a numerically optimal refueling plan, ignoring the human cost of exhaustion. They were survivors, but they were now faulty archives of the entity, carrying the blueprint of perfection within their fractured minds. Upon their eventual grueling return to Puerto Natales, the cover-up was immediate, absolute, and utterly silent. The official story, a geothermal vent failure coupled with a severe, localized blizzard, was filed, sealed, and swiftly approved by the highest levels of the Chilean and international scientific consortia. Dr. Hilaire Vance was declared lost in a catastrophic, unrecoverable accident. Dimitri, the 3rd team member, was listed as a second casualty, classified as lost due to exposure and psychological disorientation. The recovered data, the non-Euclidean sonar image of the cube, the raw frequency logs, and Dr. Vance's final entries, were immediately extracted and went directly into a heavily restricted, multinational file, managed by covert security agencies, including the same Directorate K elements that had managed the fallout of the infamous Ural 37 incident. Flores found himself in a sterile, windowless debriefing room, facing a panel of highly placed intelligence analysts from 3 different continents. Among them was an anonymous, gaunt Russian analyst, identified only by the designation K3, who spoke with a chilling, almost synthetic flatness, a man who had spent his life studying controlled disasters. "Major Flores," the analyst stated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your description of the temporal dilation, the vaporization residue, and the geometric visual hallucination, the subjective feeling of required symmetry, are identical to our earlier regrettable incident report, codenamed Night Field, Ural 37. There is 0 variance in the psychological and physical residue. B. The global network and the regulator's purpose." The analysts revealed the terrifying, cross-continental truth. The black geometry, the Varlik, was not a single, isolated anomaly, but a network of ancient regulators embedded deep within the Earth's mantle, utilizing geothermal energy as a massive power source. They theorized that the Varlik was an intrinsic, massive planetary immune system, designed to actively damp down the forces of entropy and chaos, both geological and biological, to ensure the planet's ultimate structural stability. They cross-referenced the final known location of Ural 37 with the Patagonian coordinates. Both sites sat directly atop minor, yet extremely deep, geothermal fault lines. The common factor was not the science or the nation, it was the geology, the repeating pattern of ambitious, chaotic human science disturbing the entity at its weakest, most energy-rich points. The Russian analyst detailed the catastrophic parallels. Ural-37 utilized the Z-wave to push towards the Schumann resonance. Vanguard-8 found a natural phenomenon that dragged the Schumann resonance towards it. Both events were characterized by the entity attempting to achieve a perfect, stable, harmonic convergence, proving the regulator's consistent, inhuman goal. The ultimate finding was that the cube's network was designed to ensure the planet's long-term stability. The field was merely purging the most chaotic, unpredictable element, human consciousness, that continually threatened to destabilize its delicate geological order. The 7-minute temporal lag was merely a localized side effect of the cube attempting to slow down the rate of entropy within its active zone, a microscopic pocket of manufactured timelessness. C. The final transmission and the new beacon Flores was forced to watch a final, unedited, corrupted video file retrieved from Dr. Vance's personal archives. The short clip showed her standing inside the habitat, her eyes wide and serene, an expression of ultimate, terrifying clarity. Suddenly, a symmetrical distortion appeared in the glass of the skylight, a perfect, silent ripple of heat and light. Dr. Vance smiled, utterly devoid of fear, and spoke her final recorded words directly to the camera. "It knows our chaos. Now, it knows our frequency. We attempted to disturb the field, but we only succeeded in activating the entire network. It will not wait for a third instance of human curiosity. It will simply adjust the dial. The convergence is coming not to the ice, but to the global network itself." The video cut abruptly to pure, digital static, the sound of nothing. Flores walked out of the debriefing knowing the ultimate, chilling truth. They had not defeated the entity, they had taught it to be more efficient, to better understand the blueprint of human neurological chaos. The next time the dial was adjusted, there would be no warning, no distress beacon, no temporal lag, and no residual salt left behind. There would only be perfect, absolute, global silence. Flores was forever pulled between the beautiful, messy chaos of being human and the mesmerizing, seductive stillness of the cube's absolute order. He knew the entity was simply waiting for the next ambitious scientist, the next curious mind, to stumble upon the ancient, hidden order beneath the chaotic surface of the world. The field, once awakened, will always be looking back, waiting for the return of the chaos it so perfectly despises. The most terrifying legacy of the incident was not the cube, but the knowledge it left behind. The frequency of order was now known, and the secret knowledge itself, imprinted on the minds of the survivors, was the ultimate, inescapable beacon for the entity's third and final global instance.